Hello all, James here. Now, yesterday's video on this very channel featured myself talking about an actress called Damaris Lewis, who, while plugging the Mildred Burke biopic Queen of the Ring, which she had a bit part in, immediately said to the live AEW Revolution PPV audience the following.
One thing I learned about pro wrestlers, y'all know you're gonna win before anybody else does. So thank you for teaching me that.
Okay, so is there any other way of interpreting what she said other than wrestling is predetermined? Well, apparently so. So there is now a theory floating around that somehow Damaris meant something about wrestlers believing in themselves as being winners before they step into the ring rather than wrestlers being aware of the predetermined outcome. Now, basically, it was a giant boneheaded misspeak, according to the Queen of the Ring co-star Camille. Now, that is possibly the case. Possibly. And during the AEW Revolution pre-show, they did an interview Damaris did with, I can't remember the Kelly, I think her name was, the pre-show when RJ City asked her what she had taken away from a brief brush with pro wrestling.
And she carried this model in her, which is what I learned from her, that I know I'm going to win before you know I'm going to win. Mm-hmm. And so she had to carry with her just like everyone else, and I'm on.
There you go, that's pretty much it. So, here's the problem. What she said on the AEW Revolution pay-per-view was absolutely not what she said in the pre-show whatsoever. Now, Damaris' friend Camille posted a rambling Instagram video later that day, and she basically jumped through verbal hoops to, in a roundabout way, give a contradictory account of what Damaris actually said. Now, Camille also claimed that Damaris was a deep thinker, and also, and that all wrestling fans are, mean and nasty, and apparently should have hunted out. This is actually genuinely it. Hunted out the AEW Revolution pre-show clip that I just showed you there, and also watched the Queen of the Ring movie in full to get all the context, and then tie all those things together, and then, after all that, decipher what Damaris actually meant to say, which had no relation to what she actually said. Here's the thing. English words, we've all agreed what they mean, right? And the words that Damaris used in the order she used them without prior context can only be reasonably interpreted as saying the wrestlers knew who was going to win before the match got into the ring. Now, if Damaris didn't actually mean it this way, that's absolutely fine, and I sympathise with her because, we've all said things that we mean one way, and then they just come out completely the wrong way. And, I've done it many, many times. Never on a pay-per-view, obviously, but, it's how it is. But here's the thing for Camille, is don't tell me that I'm bad or stupid for interpreting somebody else's words reasonably or correctly. Damaris' statement simply came across as mocking fans for liking fake wrestling. And if she didn't mean that, fine. But it, for all the world, appeared that she did. But the real question is, why was Damaris even involved in the promotion of the film? But not only were, the off-the-cuff sound bites counterproductive to promoting the film, she was 13th from the top of the bill, as I said in the video yesterday. Now, there were any number of better qualified or more relevant actors or actresses who could have promoted the film live at the AEW Revolution pay-per-view without saying that, basically. And in fact, 9th on the bill was a woman called Kaylee Farmer, who played Mildred Burke's in-ring nemesis June Byers. Kaylee Farmer is Camille. Now, why wasn't Camille the one being interviewed? She's hired by AEW. She's an independent contractor with AEW. It's because Camille is now persona non grata with AEW. And as best we can tell, Camille is actually still signed with AEW, despite the fact we've not seen her for months on TV. But she did not also feature in any of AEW's own red carpet premiere video for Queen of the Ring in Los Angeles. And it just seems that they've omitted any and all mentions and footage of Camille, while featuring numerous other AEW talent, regardless of whether they actually did or didn't feature in Queen of the Ring, including Tony Storm, Prince Nana, Sky Blue, Deonna Purrazzo, Julia Hart, Queen Aminata, and more. So, to reiterate, Camille is not a bit part player in this film. Camille is the final boss heel in this film. She plays June Byers. She is the woman who Mildred Burke ends up having a shoot fight with for the World Women's title, and it's the culmination of the movie, and Camille's role is very pivotal in the final scenes. Camille was actually at the premiere of the film in Los Angeles with everyone else. Once again, she was not featured by AEW. But Camille was actually also at the Louisville premiere of Queen of the Ring, where she wasn't once again featured or mentioned or promoted by AEW, but she was interviewed by staunch AEW opponent Jim Cornette. Now, AEW's seemingly purposeful omission has led to everybody believing that Camille is on the outs with Tony Khan and AEW, and it's definitely a theory that has a lot of, sort of weight behind it. And then Camille is the latest lucky winner, basically, of AEW's internal roster contest of who can be sent home and paid for 3 years without doing anything. Now, what happened to Camille that she's now being totally ghosted by Tony Khan and AEW? Well, to figure out hypothesis, we need to look back on a brief run with the company. Camille was signed in February of 2024, yet she was actually took another 5 months to actually be brought to TV, and she debuted by attacking Britt Baker and then aligning herself with Mercedes Moné. And then Camille was meant to be the unstoppable bodyguard and insurance policy for Moné, like she was for Nick Aldis in the NWA when the NWA promotion was remotely watchable. And then essentially she's essentially doing the original China role, mute and all. At least she was in NWA. But as often is the way in AEW, Tony Khan didn't know how to book a towering badass heater, and then he booked Camille to get outsmarted and beaten up constantly by Mercedes' opponents to the point that Camille's character was already dead in the water. And then when that wasn't happening, Camille was booked to be incompetent, and then Mercedes Moné would berate her, and then seemingly it would lead to just the obvious showdown between the two when they eventually split. And then Camille had a couple of bad matches with Chris Statlander and Queen Aminata, and everything seemed to fall off quickly from there on in. That was in October, by the way, of 2024. Now, during a live segment on AEW Dynamite, Mercedes Moné was about to fire Camille as her bodyguard, and then Camille grabbed the microphone and then quit before Moné had the chance to fire her. Dutch Mantel and I talked about this segment back in November, and it was not a good segment. In fact, it was one of the most horrendously delivered acting segments you will ever see, delivery-wise and everything. And they both actresses as well. Anyway, Camille was found mysteriously attacked shortly afterwards on the November 30th episode of AEW Rampage. And then, just like the Rampage show itself, Camille disappeared like a fart in the wind. Now, Camille was... Apparently, rumours were, even at the time, that Camille wasn't coming back and that she was just done with the company. Now, even though Camille is apparently barred from any and all AEW engagements, she is still promoting the film. Now, while promoting Queen of the Ring in an interview with WrestleZone, the obvious question of why Camille has been absent from AEW programming came up, to which her co-star and revelator of all things wrestling are fake, Damaris Lewis, or even though she didn't mean it apparently, jokingly said, and here's the quote, "My client has chosen to not comment on the matter at hand, but we are open for more questions." So I get that this is like an amusing retort, right? But seriously, AEW is ghosting Camille during the film production that she's one of the main characters in. And Camille doesn't want to address why she's not been on AEW television for months either. It's very, very weird. But the answer is, what the heck is going on here? And I have theories. No facts, by the way, to back them up, but theories, for goodness sake. Don't take this as read. Number one, Mercedes Moné personally either didn't like Camille or Camille's work. They cut that obvious story off of the legs between Camille and Mercedes and got rid of Camille from AEW television in just basically double quick time. They just wrote her off, you're gone. Gave her the Jade Cargill treatment, except that Jade Cargill came back. Now, the obvious thing to do would be to have Moné and Camille build to the match, or if they wanted Moné over quickly, just have Moné beat Camille decisively before writing out Camille completely. At least get some use out of that character and all that TV time they put into it. But none of these things have happened. And I figure, once again, complete guess, that is Mercedes' call. Moné is a power player in AEW, commensurate with the amount of money she's making. I imagine she can call some of the shots. Now, number two is Camille posted Camille's controversial and divisive Instagram posts were putting her at odds with the values of Tony Khan and perhaps other people in power within AEW. I won't bother getting into what she posted because, as much as I'd like to, this isn't a political or religious podcast. I stick to wrestling on this, but if you want to, search for, quote, Camille, Reddit, Instagram, and you'll find nothing that's likely to endear her to the majority of the women's locker room. Once again, pure speculation on my part, but the fact that Camille went from a featured player in the women's division to being actively ignored, ghosted, whatever you want to say, by AEW and Tony Khan, especially when there's the perfect opportunity to synergize AEW and the Mildred Burke biopic, something serious happened to damage the relationship between the two. The quitting storyline was clearly going to lead to, Mone and Kamille wrestling at least once and probably longer, and I think it's safe to say that Mone, Tony Khan, or whoever else didn't feel like they could trust Camille in the ring, given her recent performances. She isn't very good at promos, apparently. I mean, definitely according to that last one where she quit. That was bloody awful. Anyway, that's proved that it made for bad television, but here's another thing. It could just be a major personality clash behind the scenes. But add to the fact that Camille's character had already been effectively neutered almost right away from after she debuted. There all of a sudden was no benefit to having Mone and Kamille working together at all. Here's another theory. Weeks after Camille was written off AEW television, Megan Bayne debuted. Now, Tony Khan has his latest shiny toy in the form of a muscled-up woman to feature in the division, so even if there was a chance for a return, there now really isn't any space for Camille anymore. Bayne and Penelope Ford are doing the exact same shtick in 2025 that Camille and Mercedes were doing in 2024. Now, Camille might be brought back very occasionally to do a job, or she might just sit at home and do the occasional indie appearance and collect a big fat check from AEW until her contract runs out. But it seems that Camille and AEW are not going to be seeing eye to eye anytime in the near future. So, that is my video, that is my opinion. Like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you for the next one.